jars.xyz. I'm here with my good friend, Jacob. What's up, man?
How's it going? Welcome to the first episode of Great Scott, where we will be talking about The Office,
Yeah.
a story of an American workplace. We'll be going through all the episodes in order. This will be a full spoiler podcast. So if you haven't seen the show yet, don't listen to this one unless you don't care. So yeah, we're going to be talking about things they retcon, things they change, things that are mentioned and never seen, because there's a bunch of it. Because I've been through The Office end to end at least 4 times.
Yeah,
and that doesn't count seeing the seasons as like rewatching the seasons as a show was still going on. Because I started watching The Office in the middle of season 2. So I was with it week to week pretty early. So I guarantee you I've seen the second season at least 10 times.
Yeah. It's super easy to like rewatch the beginning because like you're always like, all right, well, I'll just start from the beginning. And then but I think I started in college, Thirsty Thursdays became NBC Thursdays, so you line up to watch some Office and some 30 Rock and then some Parks and Rec was that introduced. And, it's just a good show. So when you're like, hey, let's do this podcast, I was like, well, that makes sense.
Okay. So normally we won't do a lot of back and forth, but today I want to kind of give everyone a sense of what we like and, things in the episodes we like. So what are your top 5 favorite Office episodes, at least right now?
So it was, we talked about this and it was tough. Let me tell you, it was tough. So this is my answer as of today. You ask me any other day, it might change. This is listed in no order, mostly chronological, but I got season 2, episode 1, The Dundies.
The Dundies, great episode. Written by Mindy Kaling.
How was it? Look at that. Yeah. You're on the up and up, man.
We're gonna get all sorts of knowledge.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. All right, I got season 2, episode 12, The Injury.
I have a lot of friends who really love The Injury. It's a good episode, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't crack the top 5 for me.
That's fair. I got season 2, episode 22, Casino Night.
Casino Night, that's classic.
Yep. Then season 3, episode 1, Gay Witch Hunt. And then season 3, this is kind of cheating, episode 10 and 11, but the whole Benihana Christmas arc.
Benihana Christmas, yep, that's one of mine. For me, I don't have the episode numbers right in front of me, but Email Surveillance from season 2, absolutely love that one. Just one of my all-time favorites. When you go over to like Jim's house and the whole thing, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
The Job from that'd be the season finale of season 3.
Yep.
When they go to New York and interview. I think this is a really great, because you get that look from Pam at the very end. It just like breaks my heart every time. It
was on my I just made a big list of episodes I liked, and that was on that list for a long time. But as I had to cut down, it missed the cut. But I agree, that look it's key.
It makes the entire. It actually kind of makes the show in some respects.
Mm-hmm.
One of mine that I think is just really fun is Murder. It's like season 5. It's right when like Dunder Mifflin's going under right before Saber buys him out.
Right.
And Michael has the whodunit game that he's trying to get everyone to play. And
that weird like dinner theater kind of game they're playing.
Right. Yeah. So love that one. I think it's hilarious. This one, I can't believe it's actually in my top 5 now, but Dinner Party from season 4. I mean, that is one of the most cringy. Oh, it's so hard to watch sometimes, but the more I've seen it, the more I just love it.
Wow. Yeah. That was on my list for a while too, but I had to make the cut. Yeah.
And then Benihana Christmas rounding out the top 5. And those are in no particular order. And ask me in a week, like you said, I'll probably change.
Yeah. Yeah. I felt bad when I was making this list because I hit a point after season 4 and I was like, I like the whole show, obviously. But there's just something about the earlier seasons that you definitely feel a little bit more connected to,
It's probably because we've seen them so many more times.
That's probably exactly what it is, yeah.
And, like getting into like season 5 and later is when I started to binge it a bit more.
Mm.
You know, like with DVR like 5-6 episodes and watch them all at once instead of week to week. You know, seasons 2, 3, and 4 were every week. You know, it was appointment television. I didn't miss a one. But starting in season 5 is when I started to binge a bit more and that kind of stuff. But also that's when I also started having money, so I would buy the DVDs and watch them during the week back when DVDs were a thing and Netflix wasn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I own up to season 5, but then once Netflix had it, it became hard for me to be like, well, it's always on Netflix. But,
right.
I want to own them all, obviously. The bonus features are just funny enough. All the bloopers and stuff and the deleted scenes. I mean, that's basically like 3 episodes in and of itself if you just watch deleted scenes like from the whole season.
If they were to ever like roll out a 9-season Blu-ray box set that included the documentary series, I would be all over it. I would be like, here's my $400. Just take it. Just take it. So for the most part, we're going to try to spend about 15 minutes an episode. So if you want to get into it, we can. The first episode is obviously the pilot, and that was directed by Ken Kwapis,
something like that. Yeah.
So he actually directed a lot of episodes. He did Pilot, The Diversity Day, Sexual Harassment, The Fire, The Fight, Booze Cruise, which is a great episode, Casino Night, Gay Witch Hunt, The Job, Lecture Circuit episodes, Company Picnic, and the finale. So I mean, he's done a lot of big episodes. So yeah, he's really done a lot of really cool things. The first one was, the pilot was almost a shot-for-shot remake of the British pilot.
Yeah, I mean, even what is it? Michael has that weird bit where he says waste paper basket.
Yeah,
I was like, that's not what we call that in America, man. But yeah, it really is. And it's just really weird. I feel like there's not a lot of shows that I watch like the original and then the remake of that I noticed. But like you said, it's basically the same episode. You probably could watch them in tandem, and they might even sync up aside from like weird runtimes.
Probably. So what'd you think of the episode? What'd you like? What you didn't like?
Well, so this wasn't the first episode I had ever watched. You know, you walk into like someone's dorm and they're watching a later episode. Right. Mm-hmm. So once I got into it, then I was like, all right, let me go back. And it's like super different. Like this is not necessarily like
the epitome of the show. Pilot. You can tell they're short on money.
Yeah.
You can definitely tell Steve Carell had some hair plugs put in after the show got picked up.
Yeah, the whole first season, his hair is
it's really thin.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. But no, I mean, it's a good episode. It's like this thing where it depends what you watch first, the UK Office or the American Office, and that kind of dictates how you perceive the other version. And luckily, I watched the US Office first, and yeah, like I said, it's not super reminiscent of where the show ends up going, but no, it's a good episode. I mean, and it ends with that like super weird bit, not to jump to the end, but right where Michael plays that joke on Pam that she's fired and she's crying.
Yeah.
Like not funny, and that's why it's funny. Yeah.
Right. The first episode I saw was the Hot Girl episode. That was the first Office episode I ever seen. It was the season finale of 6, which really isn't a season finale, but one thing I find interesting is how much they start and set up from the word go. Like in the pilot, they start talking about downsizing. They talk about Stanford. They talk about Josh. You know, all these different things that would take multiple seasons to play out. You know, the resolution with Josh and that whole thing doesn't really end until the end of season 3.
Yeah.
They obviously had a decent idea of what they wanted to do with everything, and I think that's one thing the pilot did really well. They set up the characters really well. I feel like maybe I've seen it too much, but I feel like you had a really good core sense of who Pam was going to be and who Michael was going to be and who Dwight was, and those people.
You like your main guys, your opening credit folks, right?
Right.
Yeah. Um, yeah, and it's weird because you don't really like maybe Jim you walk away liking. Everybody else is kind of like, Ryan the temp is pretty, he just has a couple like unrelated one-liners about what's happening. Michael obviously super difficult to like. Dwight also super difficult to like. I mean, unless you like assholes, right? Which is like the thing.
Right.
They're all kind of jerky. And even Pam, like she's kind of like she's kind of in this weird situation, where like obvious it's like super apparent that she's got a thing for Jim, and then her fiance shows up.
Right.
So she's like in this weird area where you don't know how to perceive it, but then Jim's kind of like the likable guy. But even so, he's like pulling jokes and stuff.
Right. One thing I find interesting is the very first time you see Dwight on screen, he's singing / humming Little Drummer Boy.
Right.
So it kind of makes me wonder if even in the pilot, like him and Angela are already hooking up with each other.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, they did a pretty good job of not really alluding to any relationship between the two of them until Angela makes that like offhand comment about office romances. When there's that rumor that Michael and Jan hooked up.
Right.
And I think that's like middle of season 2. But
well,
yeah,
no,
it's
that'd be
season 3.
Dundies, because that's when the Dundee. No, that's the client. That's the client episode. Is when they're in the
Tim
start.
Meadows and stuff.
Yeah.
But like you said, if the creators were like really trying to put that much forethought in, like off the bat, like let's put out these like little nuggets of truth, and like as we move forward, we'll see if that's something we want to actually put into flourishing.
Right. So some fun things I've learned, maybe not about the pilot, but this is just interesting in general, is Phyllis was actually one of the main people to do all the casting. And she was reading lines, and they liked her so much they made a role for her.
Okay, I did not know that.
And the guy who plays Creed Braden, I posted this link, but one of the producers really liked the band that Creed was in the 60s and 70s, the Grassroots, which they mention in the in the finale. And so, which is really cool. But they're like, yeah, you know what? We'll just put you in the back, and we may or may not have end up using you. And he ends up being in like 170 episodes or something.
Yeah. I mean, because that's like even Kelly, right? In the first season, Kelly is not the Kelly we come to know.
Right.
She like wears proper business attire and stuff. It's not till later that she starts developing like her love of fashion and even like her Valley Girl kind of mentality.
Right.
I mean, we'll get into her a little bit more when we cover Diversity Day, but
yes. Yeah. Right, because she's much more very proper Indian kind of thing going on instead of what she becomes, which is really crazy, vapid kind of chick.
I mean, what else about this episode? It's
if pilots go, I feel like it's pretty strong because most pilots are terrible, and this is actually still watchable.
Yeah. I mean, it says here that it got mixed reviews. Places like the AV Club gave it like a C+. And obviously a lot of people made the comparison because you can't not, but to the UK pilot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if anything, you got to wonder if doing it so close to the original might have hurt how people interpreted it. But
do you know the time frame between the British office premiering and the American office premiering?
Well, the air date here for the US office is March 24th, 2005. The UK office aired in 2001.
So yeah, it was really close.
Yeah, it was only like 4 years apart. I mean, I guess technically speaking, the Christmas specials for the UK office had like just aired a couple months before.
Oh wow! I thought the UK office only lasted 2 years.
Yeah, it went 2 seasons, and then there was like a weird season 3. It had 2-hour-long Christmas specials, like a part 1 and part 2, that like resolve the narrative kind of between like Tim and Dawn and David and the Todd Packer equivalent and stuff like that.
Right. I've only seen the pilot. Everyone's like, oh, it's it's just one of those things where I had to go check it out.
Yeah. I mean, Ricky Gervais also seems to have written the Ricky Gervais and Stephen Merchant wrote the screenplay for this episode,
Right.
and they created the other show, so it just makes sense why they'd stick so close to, the original stuff.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's weird too because I'm looking at the air dates, and the pilot and Diversity Day are 5 days apart, and then it goes every week. But
Right.
seems like they just shoved it in somewhere because it wasn't even a mid-season replacement; it was like a late season replacement because it premiered March 24th.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's basically like the schedule of like something like Game of Thrones that like airs in April and ends in like June, July.
Right.
I guess that's too because it only 6 episodes long, like you said. So
Mhm.
yeah.
So, wow, they aired them out of order. That's interesting. So a lot of these are aired in different order from their production code. So pilots 01, Diversity Day is 1002. Healthcare was supposed to be the last episode of the season. They shuffled it around. Like Hot Girl, which ended up being the last episode, was supposed to be the 3rd episode.
I mean, like you said, there's no like really climax to this season. There's just it's like literally like the last episode.
Right. Yeah, you could definitely tell they just made episodes and hope to God they got picked up for a second season.
Yeah. So I wonder maybe if they changed it up because I don't think Amy Adams really was like anybody yet.
She wasn't. Is actually I was reading something where they said if they had known how big she was going to get, they would have kept her in the show.
Yeah, because she's in season 2 for a bit too.
Yeah, she's 3 or 4 episodes in season 2. So if you were going to rate this episode, how on a scale of something to something?
Let's do like a 1 out of 5 system. So I really have to commit to pro or con. I would probably give it like a 3, really.
Okay.
A 3 Dundies out of 5 Dundies.
3 out of 5 Dundies.
So, yeah. Yeah, it's a fine episode and it's better in context of the show as a whole. But I think as a standalone, it's not like the episode I would show someone to be like, hey, you might like this show.
Right. What I tell people is like, look, because they're like, oh, I don't want to watch Office. Like, just give it 10 episodes. If you don't love it by the 10th episode, you're never gonna love it.
Right.
And I think I'll stick with a 3 staplers in Jello out of 5 staplers in Jello.
All right, that's fair. Yeah, I think that's a reasonable assessment of the episode.
Mm-hmm. So we'll move on to Diversity Day, which was again directed by Ken Kwapis. Is that how you say his name?
That's how I'll say his name.
Okay, it's written by B.J. Novak, who is Ryan.
Yeah.
What's weird, and I think a lot of people don't understand, is most of the people who aren't like the opening credits kind of people also write episodes for the show.
Right.
Especially early, Meredith writes some episodes. Kelly writes a lot of episodes. So does BJ Novak.
Toby
writes a lot of episodes.
Yeah.
He directed a bunch.
Yeah. He's like super integral to like, the show for sure.
Between directing and writing is 34 episodes. Well, kind of 34 episodes.
Yeah, and it's like over a season of worth of content. So,
yeah.
So what do you think of this episode?
Diversity Day, it's a classic. That's where you really, see Michael be crazy. See, I'm trying to remember because I actually didn't have a chance to rewatch this one, so I'm a little fuzzy on like all the particulars. But I think it's really good. You have some interplay. You get to see some more characters because Stanley really isn't in the first episode, and he's in this one more. Same with Meredith. I think this is the first 2 episodes with them, and so that's nice. You see how just adolescent Michael can get, and how like little like. He really like sets up who his personality is going to be pretty much for the entire run.
Right.
So I really enjoyed that. Again, we were talking about like how Kelly, like when you first meet her, she's like really timid and shy.
Right.
And then eventually she becomes, crazy out there. So the question is like, did Ryan corrupt her or what?
Yeah, that's a good question. Although, yeah, probably not. They probably actually, if anything, maybe she corrupted him because he seems kind of like a normal guy. She, I forget what episode, but at some point she tells Jim that she has a crush on Ryan. And like that's like kind of the beginning of her being like this kind of ditzy gossip high school type girl, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then they hook up on Valentine's Day or something, and then
Right. I'm trying to remember which episode that was. It was early.
oh, you know, it's the episode where Jim can't talk.
Right. Which I'm trying to remember which one that was. That
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember exactly which one that is, but
Let's see here, season 2.
is it The Secret? Maybe.
Oh no, the secret's the episode after the booze. Oh, wasn't that the episode after the booze cruise?
That would be the injury. So that's not it. Oh, probably Valentine's Day.
Oh,
Probably that one.
yeah, that makes sense.
So that's something we can get into more later, but there's a lot of characters. Like, what do you think about the character development? So, like I said, this is a full-on spoiler cast. We'll kind of get to it now. So, we see like where Jim starts and ends, and Dwight starts and ends, and all those guys. So, what do you like? Who's your favorite character? Like transitions, I guess.
Right, in terms of like growth and stuff, right?
Right.
I mean, Michael gets to a good place. I think part of why season 1 is so tough for me is because Michael's so unlikable. Like he really is like this overbearing, not funny, inappropriate boss. And then like by the time his character ends up leaving the show, he is like really because none of the people in the office like him right now, really, you know?
Right.
But by the time he leaves, people like have this different respect for him because he's kind of grown. So I think he's probably the one who is probably my favorite in terms of his arc. Dwight's probably a close second, though.
I think Dwight has the most dynamic arc because I think he changes the most. Because by the end, you know, he's still Dwight, but he's changed a lot. You know, like where Jim is still pretty much just Jim. Pam is mostly still just Pam. Like Pam and Jim really don't change all that much as people.
Right.
But Dwight does. Like he becomes a good person by the end of the show, where at the beginning of the show he's kind of a douchebag.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, because Jim and Pam, I feel like don't change enough.
Right.
And then their storyline kind of gets a little stagnant once they end up getting together. Which I think is why a lot of people feel the show loses a bit of its like lore because they're together and they try to add some drama in a couple of seasons or whatever, but that's why the relationship stuff shifts between like Dwight and Angela and Andy and Aaron and all that stuff. And he's not in this episode, but Andy has a pretty good arc up until a certain point.
Oh, until he goes crazy.
Until he goes crazy, yeah. He's like, to me, when I look at the legacy of the show in terms of negatives, Andy's arc is kind of sad to me. Because he takes the role of the Ricky Gervais character in the British Office, I think. You know, he kind of goes off the deep end at the end.
I didn't know. Like I said, I never watched the British one, but yeah. Well, I mean, at least they set up for a good reason for him to go crazy and all the stuff with his family.
Yeah,
but that's another, and I'm sure
we'll get there.
We'll get there. But
yeah, for me, it's interesting. So Larry Wilmore was in it as Mr. Brown. So him and Steve Carell were both on The Daily Show. So you can kind of see this roots. Ed Helms obviously was on The Daily Show too.
Right.
At some point, Stephen Colbert does a cameo. So there's a lot of Daily Show roots here. Yeah, I mean, that card game where they put the names on their forehead, I mean, that's just like genius.
Right.
With Stanley having the card that says just black on it and him obviously being the only black character on the show. Yeah. I mean, I think, I was just watching it the other day and I was like, I couldn't not laugh out loud.
And all the stereotypical names, like, you know, Jewish or, you know, there's all sorts of like crazy stereotypes about what he would say. Yeah.
I mean, because Dwight has Asian, right? So he's like, say something super obvious. So Pam's trying to be really PC about it. But she's like, but maybe you don't drive so good. And he goes, oh man, am I a woman? Which is like not what the whole thing was about anyway. So
right. And that's where like you start getting like the weirdness of Dwight, because the Schrutes are a weird bunch, and so that's where you start seeing like, yeah, they really don't like women a lot, and they really don't like certain things a lot. But you see him come around later. But
Right.
I thought that was a really good thing right there.
What did you think about? Because they really kind of hammer in these two episodes, and obviously it's important to Michael's character, but like his desire to be like funny.
Mm-hmm.
So in that first episode, he does that Hitler bit where he puts a stapler up to his nose.
Right.
And here, obviously, he does that Chris Rock joke, and then he flat out drops racial profanity.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's what part of me is why it's like it's so hard to like him this season. I mean, it's funny as a viewer, you know?
The thing with Michael that I'm still trying to like figure out is he's obviously not stupid.
Right.
But the way he comes across is also really weird. So it's like it almost feels like some kind of social disorder a little bit.
Okay.
Like he does it like he wasn't ever liked, so he tries way too hard to be liked. And I think especially after Jan and everything, that he realizes that he can get someone to love him. That's when he starts to change a little bit.
Right.
And he meets Holly and all that stuff. So I think that might be part of it.
Yeah.
But it's sort of one of those. Are you familiar with the Peter Principle?
Yeah.
In business. So for those who don't know, it's the majority of people eventually get promoted out of their competency. So eventually you're going to get promoted one level too high and you're going to be terrible at your job. And that's what Michael is. I think for the most part.
Yeah, he was a great salesperson.
Right. Best in the company,
Yeah. Right. And then becomes branch manager or whatever, and he flounders around.
Right. And so it's, and so the success of the branch is, some of it's him because he's still selling, but a lot of it's done in spite of him.
Yeah.
So I think that's an interesting dynamic to see. Yeah. Michael and Dwight are tough in the first two seasons. Right.
There's an interesting thing in this. There's like the B storyline here too, is that Jim is trying to make this sale, this like annual sale that makes most of his money throughout the year.
Like a quarter of his commission, right?
Yeah, and it's one of the few times I think until Jim and Pam get together where Jim is kind of like on the ropes. He's usually like always the one-upsman, Right. Michael's too dumb for him, so that's why he gives the Jim look to the camera. He's always pranking Dwight, and Dwight just can't keep up. There's a couple times where maybe him and Pam have like a weird bit, but generally it seems like Jim is like a guy who knows what's going on. He just doesn't like his job.
Yeah, he knows he's smart, but he's lazy.
Yeah. But this episode, he ends up not making that sale. I think Dwight makes the sale for him.
Right. Dwight swoops in and takes it over from him.
Yeah. So it's just this weird kind of bit where you see Jim lose, which is not something we see again for a little while. And again, so once we get further away from it, I won't keep bringing it up. But the UK office equivalent, Tim, which is played by Martin something. How did I forget this guy's name?
Oh, he's like a big deal, right?
Yeah, he's Watson in Sherlock. Anyways, whatever the hell his name is. Through that show, he's Martin Freeman. That's it. Thank you. He's not as cool as Jim. He plays pranks on the Dwight equivalent, but like he lives at home. He like wears a funny birthday hat, but people pick on him. So the UK office is not as nice to that guy. Jim is usually on the up and up. So it's weird again in context of the whole show to see Jim kind of struggling in this episode, like in life,
Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Hi, what's up?
Okay, you're coming back through. You got some robot voicing going on.
I see. That happens sometimes.
Yeah, you're good though.
Okay. Diversity Day earned positive reviews. Entertainment Weekly liked it. Ricky Gervais said, quote, "It is as good as the British Office. I love the fact that apart from the first one, the scripts are all original. You've gone back to the blueprint of what the characters are, and you've started from there as opposed to copying anything.
Right.
I mean, he was an executive producer on the show, so it's not like he'd ever really shit talk it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but
The Office was unique when it first premiered because of the format, right? The real sort of documentary style, and a lot of people have now copied it. But how did you like it when it first came on? And how do you think it still plays, even though a lot of people do it now?
Yeah, I guess I didn't think much of it at first, although there was a question for a little while if the camera people matter, you know?
Right.
So to do a parallel, Parks and Rec, which is created by Greg Daniels also, it's shot in the same way, but there is no camera crew. It's just a plot device when they do those talking head moments.
Right.
In The Office, they have a microphone, like it's a whole thing for the 5-6 years that the show is on, maybe longer. I'm bad. They're walking around with wireless microphone packs. There's a camera crew in their office with lights set up, and it's like a real big hindrance. So it's interesting that this version of the show decides to address it, because Arrested Development also has a similar kind of style.
Kind of.
Yeah, they don't do the talking heads, but like the cameras are almost a character in the show too.
Right.
But they also don't reference the fact that camera people exist.
And then, they really bring in the whole camera crew stuff in season 9.
Jesus, 9 seasons. Okay, that's how long the show went on. Yes.
Yeah.
That's right, with that Brian guy or whatever.
Right. Yeah. And, how he talks about like the person who's by you is important because you end up falling in love with them. And, the camera dude had fallen in love with Pam. And,
yeah. Yeah, it's true. I mean, so for a job, I'm a social marketing specialist and a videographer. And I often have to videotape gift bags, and I have a huge admiration for gift bags now. So I agree. Yeah. BJ Novak was also nominated for a Writers Guild Award for this episode.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah. So, like I said, for me personally too, this episode is this is a much stronger episode, I think, than the pilot. To kick off the show. Yeah.
Right, but there's not as much pilots you have to do so much with.
Right.
Where once you don't have to introduce the characters anymore, you can start doing stories and everything else. And so that's why pilots are always kind of weak.
Right.
If you look back at the great pilots of all time, they're almost always shows that had already been sort of established. Like Frasier is considered one of the greater pilots of all time, but everyone already knew who he was from Cheers.
Right.
That kind of thing. Kelsey Grammer was playing Dr. Crane for 20 years, almost 20 straight years on television.
Yeah, I mean that's okay for him though, because he was just this dude in a bar in Cheers,
Right.
Yeah, so he was really able to flesh it out and have a brother and date people and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Although he was, that his ex-wife from Frasier obviously was in Cheers too, because they weren't exes at the time.
Right.
They were married, yeah.
So I'm trying to think some interesting things that are set up. So what are some of your favorite, least favorite? Because we're kind of petering out on actual episode talk.
Yeah.
But just single favorite moments from the show. Ones that you're just this one's awesome, or you just love.
Well, I will say the pilot introduces Jim's pranks on Dwight. And as you referenced, it's the stapler and the Jello, which is the first one.
Right.
And then from there, most of the cold opens, a lot of them are Jim Dwight pranks.
Right. And so some of the cold opens are just fantastic. That's something we're gonna start doing as we go forward, is talking about the cold open themselves.
Yeah. And
how it kind of ranks, because the cold opens are a beast to themselves in a lot of respects,
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, there's just something about the awkwardness, it really tones down British awkwardness, but allows American people to be awkward in a way that really necessarily hasn't been done before. Seinfeld kind of was close because they talked about everything, but they never showed it. Like it was funny because Jerry was aware of it, but The Office like lets that stuff like sit, you know. So Michael will say something terrible, and it'll let Jim look at the camera and be like, "Do you see what I have to put up with?" You know.
Right. I feel like it feels very human. Like, you know, there are these, a lot of times you watch something on TV and it doesn't feel really just normal, I guess.
Right.
But a lot of those times you like, there's a lot of stuff in the office where I'm like, yeah, I've done this because, you know, I've worked in corporate offices most of my career. And it's like, yeah, I've seen these people.
Yeah.
We all know, we all hear the rumors. We all know that people, especially because I used to work at a sort of a smaller company. The corporate offices probably had like 300 people in it, so you kind of knew everybody to some extent. And,
Right.
you know, when two people started hooking up, you know it. When someone started cheating on somebody else, you knew it.
Right.
You know, so it wasn't as small as this, but you still have that sort of feel. And when you work in a small environment like that, you do get that. I think they capture a lot of the dynamics really well.
Yeah.
Of just the boredom.
Yeah. And I think too, I guess like at the end of the day, when you walk away from The Office, what's really nice is like you were talking about before, you get to see these characters grow. I mean, Jim is like this mid-20s post-college guy who doesn't really have a lot of aspirations. And it moves on to him trying to start his own company, you know?
Right.
Got a wife and 2 kids and all that kind of stuff. And even Dwight, too, who is like this weird, reserved, you know, Battlestar Galactica nerd, turns into, you know, someone who like cares about his coworkers. Yeah, it's just not a lot of shows it lasts long enough for you to see that kind of growth from characters. You know?
One thing that I do like about The Office, and you can kind of see it, I'm pretty sure there's a spot in diversity, especially early. If you watch the backgrounds, a lot is going on. Like you'll see a camera guy, so it works. So you'll see like some of the actual crew,
right?
But since it's the documentary, you just kind of write off as like, oh, that's just one of the documentary guys.
Right.
It's either in the first or second episode, maybe third episode. You can see like the boom mic in the frame.
Yeah.
And I'll bring it back up when we hit this, but they start dropping hints about stuff early.
Okay.
Because there's in season 2, there's a reference to Prince family paper that doesn't show up to like what, season 5.
Yeah.
So if you watch the surroundings, you get a lot more details and information.
Right.
It's also funny because if you look around, because it was shot in LA, but it's supposed to be in Scranton, right?
Yeah.
So if you look, especially when they're showing the building, if you look in the distance, you can see like the mountain ranges in California.
Right. Mountains that like, well, there are a lot of mountains in Pennsylvania, but those
not
are
like
their
those
mountains. Yeah.
And also for the first couple of episodes, when they show you the building, it's not the same building. Like, the building they show you is much larger, much more industrial, and then they get sort of that office park building.
I think too, the first season was shot in an actual office. I mean, let me double check that, but I feel like that's what I had read. And then it was like for season 2 moving forward, where they basically just made a soundstage of that office space.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, well, it's tough because we're at the beginning of the show here, right? So we're trying not, because obviously we'll spoil, but we're trying not to get too far ahead because we're sitting here knowing that we have like 9 years of story here, you know?
Right.
So it is a little tough to kind of at least rein it in a little bit.
And, you know, these first 2 episodes are a little thin. So as we get into more, you know, thicker episodes, I'm sure we'll have more to talk about.
Because you even said too how cool it is that they mentioned like the downsizing, and it doesn't really come up again significantly. Like it's referenced kind of in the Alliance, which is episode 4 this season, but not again until season 2.
Right.
So it's like you said, it's this seed that's planted, but it's nothing that's built on yet.
And maybe it's just how they decide to write it, and with as much muscles it had behind it with Ricky Gervais and the other people, and they were using nobody, so that was really cheap to produce. It almost felt like they knew they were going to have multiple seasons,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so they were able to take their time with it. Like nothing really feels rushed in The Office. It does feel very organic in a lot of respects.
I mean, looking at the viewership here, the pilot had 11 million viewers.
Mm-hmm.
Every episode in season 1 after that is basically cut down by half. 6 million, 5.8 million, 5.4 million, 5 million, and 4.8 million, respectively. So I wonder, because it was such a short time period, right? We're talking about 6 weeks, so not even 2 full months. What goes through their heads as like they see those numbers drop,
Well, pilots are almost always busy, and because of the weird timing, it makes me wonder if they put the pilot episode right after a big like sporting event or something like that, because because that 5-day timing kind of seems like it was on a Sunday and then on to a Thursday.
Right. And I don't know too if Thursday was like the titan of NBC at the time, because I'm not too up on NBC sitcoms as a whole. But like I said, in college, like Thursday was like the night. You tune on NBC, you've got 30 Rock, you got Parks and Rec, you got The Office. I think Community was on Thursday originally.
Yeah. That was CBS.
Community?
No, you're right. It was NBC.
Yeah.
But Thursday night had always been big for them, because that wasn't earlier. That was like Friends and Seinfeld, and
So it was like that night. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, Thursday night, they call it must see TV for a reason.
Yeah. But to me, like, because it made me like not want to go anywhere else but NBC, like during the run of the show, especially when those other shows were airing at the same time.
Yeah, it made me sad that some of the other shows that they put around The Office didn't last. There was a show called Outsourced, which ran, and I loved that show. It was so good, but it just didn't last.
Yeah. So while we kind of wind down here, let's go the other way, and just we'll talk about it in depth moving forward. But off the top of your head, what's probably like your least favorite episode or storyline or something?
Least favorite. I hate the Will Ferrell episodes. I will almost always skip them. I hate them. They're stupid. Like, I get why you want to have him on there. It's a really cool thing to do, but like his character was crazy, and I just didn't like it. Just didn't work. Like those episodes, like the episode that Michael left was fantastic.
Yeah,
but those like 2 episodes after that were terrible. I don't know if they were just like, you know what, guys, like they were so tired from. But even some of the episodes, like the last Dungeons episode was kind of crappy.
right.
It just didn't work. That part didn't work. Season 5, I think, probably the worst season. Even though the more I rewatch it, the more I like it. But that's, and I don't know if it was just one of those like weird timings for me, but that's when I kind of got connected from the show a little bit.
Yeah.
And unlike a lot of people, I love season 9. I think it's really well done for the most part, and I think the finale is fantastic. I kind of disliked the Pam Jim struggles.
I agree.
But that's another thing they set up early that I just caught on my last watch through.
Okay.
Like they started planting those seeds in season 8.
Right.
In the Florida episode, there's a and we'll talk about it when we get there, but there's a little drop where someone says something about how bad their Jim and Pam's marriage is.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember reading somewhere about the Will Ferrell episodes, but they said something like they didn't want the show to end on like a goodbye Michael note, to like leave it sad. That's why they made him go out sooner. And then they kind of are supposed to be like rejuvenating you with Will Ferrell. And And is he in the first episode of the next season, or does he end up? He ends up
he's
leaving at the end of
only.
that
I
season.
think it's like 3 episodes he's in, 3-4 episodes tops. Because then he like breaks his neck or dies or something.
Yeah, he tries to do that
The
slam dunk
dunk.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With that being said, though, his juggling bit is hilarious.
So good with Evanescence playing.
Yeah.
That's the way to do it. Yeah.
Pam's like making fun of him. That was really good.
I know she does like a one hand thing.
Yeah. Look, no hands. So what about you? Least favorite storyline episode?
Well, so a lot of my friends always told me that they really disliked the Super Bowl episode, which was Stress Relief, the one where Stanley has a heart attack in the beginning.
Right.
For them, they felt like it was too silly. Like for them, maybe it jumped the shark. I remember watching the episode live though, and I was like cracking up. Like the camera angles are low, and Kevin's pushing people over and trying to get into the snack machine. And there's that weird bit where they're trying to do CPR on the dummy, and they're all singing "Staying Alive" or whatever.
And then like cuts the face off. Yeah.
And so a lot of my friends were like, "That like everybody in this office went full stupid." And that doesn't make sense to me. I kind of like it, but that's what I had heard. But on a real personal level, I think it's Andy's de-evolution. Because I was like really stoked when he became manager. I was like, it makes sense. He came from this like kind of assholey like dude in Hartford, where he's all like trying to one up everybody.
Right.
Then he's like this punchy fish out of water in Scranton. And then he becomes like the dumb little brother who tags along with everybody. Finally to the manager of the office. And then I don't really understand why they kind of made him not be good anymore, and like why they broke him and Aaron up, and then Aaron ends up dating, what's that dude's name? Fart?
Plop.
Plop, that's it. Yeah, Jim Jr. Because he was like super undeveloped, and Aaron's just like, yeah, sure, whatever. So that bummed me out, and I guess it left a bad taste because it's kind of how the show starts to wind down with that whole separation between those characters. But the show has me up until that point, so it did a pretty good job keeping me. But yeah, that's how I feel.
I know a lot of people really hate the banker episode. It's something that comes up if you're ever on the r/Dunder Mifflin on Reddit. Like they hate the banker episode, but that's one of those I actually really like. That's the clip show episode.
Yeah.
But if you look at that particular episode, it's the episode right before Saber shows up. So it's really a sort of a demarcating episode for the entire series. So I think doing the clip show at that point was really good.
Yeah. I think people just generally don't like clip shows. They feel like it's like lazy writing. I mean, there is stuff in that episode, but
right. Well, and I understand why like some people got pissy about it because me and my wife recently rewatched Friends, and there's like 2 a season.
Right.
It's terrible how many clip shows they have in that show.
Yeah, I mean, because you're watching it for something new, so it's kind of a bummer when you make time out of your day to watch an episode and it's just the stuff that you've seen already. But I get it. But that's just one episode. That doesn't really like ruin the show,
Yeah. So, what is your ranking for Diversity Day?
For Diversity Day, I'd probably give it. I think I'm gonna give it 4 out of 5 Corvettes. Is that what Dwight drives? Is that it? Corvettes? Is that what he drives?
What if I blow? Oh, I think we lost you. Hello.
Oh, I'm here.
Okay, so say what you said again.
I think Dwight drives a Corvette in the beginning, yeah, because I want to give it 4 out of 5 Corvettes.
No, he.
It's
280, 1978 280Z.
That's it. Yeah.
1970. I think I'm gonna give it a 3.5, 3.5 out of 5. Bad Chris Rock impressions.
Okay, that's fair. I'll take it. Yeah.
I think it's a good episode. We can start winding it down. So, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for coming out to our podcast. BrokenJars.xyz. We have a bunch of other podcasts there. We'll be live on YouTube. We're going to be running every 2 weeks because we have other podcasts that we just don't have enough time to do all the podcasts we want to do all the time. So we have to kind of split it up. We'll be getting, we'll have show notes. We'll have the schedule out, so you'll be able to know when your favorite episodes are coming up. We'll be posting to the Dunder Mifflin subreddit. If you want to talk to us, I'm at Jacob Ingles on Twitter. There's at Broken Jars Pod on Twitter for our network's podcast, our network's Twitter. Broken Jars at XYZ, Broken Jars Broadcasting at gmail.com, at Broken Jars Broadcasting on Instagram if you want to do that. I'm already starting to get some internet people lined up to guest, so it's going to be great. I hope you enjoy the show. J Ray, where can they find you if you want to be found? What are the podcasts you're on? You
can find me on Twitter at JAY_REY. You could hit me and my buddy Alex up at Shylocks_gaming on Twitter. We also do the Shylocks Gaming podcast every Thursday night live. It comes up over the internet sometime over the weekend whenever Alex isn't too lazy to edit it. But tune in there for all your game news and stuff. We just did a real hefty E3 episode. So if you didn't pay attention to that, you can pay attention to us.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a good night. I hope your week is good. And whenever you listen to this, hope that is good too.
Great Scott.
Great Scott.